public access, the final frontier. These are the adventures of the CineFiles, whose 5-year mission is to explore strange and unusual movies, to boldly watch and review what no one has watched before.
It's been a while since we've been in the studio, but we are here back. We got new shows. We got a lot of stuff to discuss. But before I do, let me introduce our wonderful co-host. To my left, Mr. Eric Cohen. To his left, Jeff Gallishaw, and to his left, Michael Foltz. All right. Well, let's give everybody an update. We've taken a little sabbatical. As you can see, I've grown a mustache. So it's been a while since we've been taping.
And I shaved my mustache.
We've taped a lot of new shows, which we hope to have uploaded to YouTube. We actually did a lot of location shoots. We did one at Eric's apartment. We did one at a wonderful bar in Bushwick called Gotham City Lounge, which you'll see soon. And we also did one down in Lower East Side called Nurse Betty's, another great bar. And we decided to theme shows around the actual surroundings. So be on the lookout for those, and check out some more mini reviews, which we'll be posting on YouTube. As Gloria, which would be very kind enough to display those on the lower third there. Please check out the YouTube website and subscribe if you haven't and whatnot.
I want to get our fans a little bit more excited because we have a two-parter coming up that talks about Star Wars. We discuss all the Star Wars films.
On this show?
Yes. Well, not on this taping. That would be Star Trek.
Oh, yes. Excuse me. Star Wars, Star Trek.
And then we also have a two-parter where we're dealing with alcoholics on one episode and junkies on the other. So there you go.
Yeah, substance abuse, man. It's going to be a good show. And also, like I said, check out the YouTube site. Please subscribe if you haven't. And we promise you, we've been a little lax with updates, but we have been working very hard behind the scenes to bring you some more
check out
quality.
our Facebook fan page.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
We don't have that listed underneath the
just
thing
look for
here.
us on Facebook. You'll see us.
Yeah, we'll just look us up on look us up on Face. Look us up on Facebook.
Or FB.
Join and join the discussions. We got discussions going.
And we're all there individually, so add us as a friend if you like. And
we miss our Manhattan fans, so
we're
come
back.
on. Yeah,
we're back. Anyway, let's get into this, guys. We were talking for a long time. We got a few requests on YouTube to do a show on Star Trek. So this is it. We're going to be doing the first. This is the first of a two-parter on the Star Trek series. We're discussing today the first the films in the entire series, which would be the motion picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, Final Frontier, and maybe if we have time, we'll do some more as well. But let's.
I wanted to see if you could actually name all of them.
Oh, I can. Okay, Final Frontier, The Undiscovered Country. Let's see, Generations. Let's see, The First Contact. The next one would be Insurrection. Then the next one after that would be Nemesis. And then the next one, of course, would be Star Trek. There you go.
Yay.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, so let's start off with Star Trek, the motion picture. I have some very interesting behind-the-scenes info on this one. Because
Good.
I hate to admit, I am not a Trekkie. I am a somewhat Trekker. I do like the series, but I am not a person who goes around wearing Vulcan ears.
What's the difference between a Trekkie and a Trekker?
I was going to ask.
Well, a Trekkie is the stuff that we call like losers. You know, like, hey, you're a Trekkie. They don't like that term, so they call themselves Trekkers. Watch the documentary Trekkies for more info on that, which is actually a very good documentary. But let's get into this today. Star Trek, the motion picture, of course, is based on the original TV series, which was a flop in its time, but became a huge hit in syndication and became the #1 rated show with young adults. At the time when it was on NBC, it was highest. The ratings were the highest, I believe, in the lower age group, which was the most in demand by advertisers.
Well, the problem with Star Trek when it was on the TV is it was going against the most highly rated show going at the time, which I forget what it was, but it was the #1 rated show in the Nielsen rating, so it had a hard time going.
Also, the rating system was different back then. They had an overall rating system where it's how many people were watching total, and not the actual age demographic. They were actually #1 from 18 to 30-year-olds. But back then, that's of course what most advertisers want to grab is that age because it's the most people.
And the show was produced by Lucille Ball.
Yes,
Desilu Productions.
But anyway, after it went
There
off
you
the
go.
air, it went into syndication, became a huge hit, and there was like talk of actually bringing back the series as another on another network. And Paramount was actually talking about creating their own network, the Paramount Network, which didn't get made until the 90s, the UPN. There was some sets built for the show, but the network never took off. And instead of shelving the entire project, they decided to make it into an actual movie because of the success of Star Wars. So Star Wars is really the catalyst for bringing back the Star Trek franchise.
And you could see, too, in Star Trek the Motion Picture, how they adapted a lot of those special effects from Star Wars into the Star Trek universe.
In fact, a lot of the actual production of Star Trek the Motion Picture was absolutely one of the most troubled, I believe, in history. It was really a very troubled shoot. Everything that went wrong could have. Harlan Ellison, who was like the greatest science fiction writer, actually was one of the people proposing storylines, and he actually
I wouldn't say the greatest, maybe
one of the greatest.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say he's a legend in his own mind. Anyway, he came up with a great concept and actually said, what if the Star Trek Enterprise goes into warp speed and they reach the end of the galaxy and meet a wall? They said, not big enough. He said, fuck you, walked out, and that was it. So they had to go back to square one. So they got some writer, and they actually retooled a script that was written for the TV series. Phase 2 is what the name of the show was. And on paper, it should have been a very good movie because you have one of the greatest directors who ever lived, Robert Wise, who basically has done many different genres. He's done.
Who is Robert Wise?
Robert Wise, of course. He's
The
done
Haunting,
West Side Story.
West Side Story, Sound of Music.
And he's also his most important contribution.
But you don't like musicals.
I don't like musicals, but his most important contribution ever was the editor of Citizen Kane. Also, he also dabbled in science fiction before. In fact, he made 2 of the most underrated science fiction films. Well, they're not underrated, but one of them is The Andromeda Strain,
Yes.
and of course, The Day the Earth Stood Still. So this man was perfect on paper for Star
So
Wars.
let's talk about the movie.
Yes,
Well,
please.
let's get into the movie, of course, concerns a mysterious probe that actually reaches the Earth and is in search of a certain entity. V'ger, looking for the creator. And it's about to destroy the actual planet, looking for this person. So the Enterprise is sent in to intercept this thing before it reaches Earth and destroys Earth. The problem with Star Trek the Motion Picture for me, in spite of wonderful eye candy. In fact, Douglas Trumbull did the special effects, who did 2001, probably the pioneer special effects man.
I was going to say that Star Trek the Motion Picture owes more to 2001 than Star Wars.
I agree with you, but it's because of Star Wars that the movie got made.
Even with the story, too, yeah.
But the problem is with me is that the Rust production schedule. As even Robert Wise said, he didn't even. He said literally the prints were dripping wet at the premiere. There was not a completed sound mix. The film went on for a long time. In fact, there's lots of scenes of the ship moving around and just like, okay, where's the story here? It just goes on and on. I feel it's a great idea, but it's just so padded out and it was just so poorly done because they were just rushed. In fact, they said, if you actually watch some of the scenes, you can see, that the sets are not even finished.
Well, it's a very slow film to sit through. In fact, really the only thing that is, to me, entertaining about it is actually maybe seeing the Enterprise on the big screen and the special effects. But other than that, I really did enjoy it. But again, I'm a mild Star Trek fan, so I'm not, busting at the seams, to watch it, because when it came out, I was still a little kid. So I just mainly watched it on cable and just thought it was like, almost like an extension of the series. So it really didn't impress me that much. I really didn't get into the movies till, the next film.
Yeah, the problem is, too, is that Robert Wise actually went back and actually improved the film quite a bit in the director's cut and actually fixed a lot of things. But the biggest weakness in the film is that this script was originally, as I said, written for TV, and it was padded out. So there's
That's
2
what
new
it feels
characters
like.
they were trying to add to the TV show in case they couldn't get Leonard Nimoy to come back, which is, of course, the Captain Decker, and Aaliyah, who is the bald-headed Persis Khambato. They are the 2 of the most boring actors.
Who they eliminated at the end of the film,
Yeah,
essentially.
they eliminated at the end of the film, and
Well, they both are somewhat eliminated. Aren't they are they
They
fused
merge,
together?
yeah,
Basically,
yeah.
it's not a bad film, but the problem is that there's so much money. It just, in Robert Wise directing, you really expected a really terrific science fiction film on the level of
Not at
2001.
the time. Not at the time. When it first came out at the theater, I didn't know Robert Wise from a hole in the head. I was just a kid. But I was a Star Trek fan because of the syndication. And I went and saw it. Yes, it is a slow film. But the reasons what you stated earlier, when you gain a whole new appreciation when you see it in the theater or you see it in a big screen presence. I'm sure you saw it at the theater, correct? And the special effects are really mind-blowing for its time. I mean, it's unbelievable. Especially the thing that blew me away was when Spock decides to get into that one-man suit with the jetpack and go and try and do a Vulcan mind meld with the presence known as V'ger, which actually turns out to be the Voyager probe. But anyway.
Spoiler. Okay. If you guys haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, like I said, but it's also interesting too that they introduced the character of Decker involved because he's the son from the Doomsday Machine, that character of Decker.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is that they'll never make that clear. It's just, trivia for fans,
Well, yeah, I mean, my feeling about the film is, when I remember seeing it the first time, I was blown away by the special effects as well. But I thought it was incredibly boring. And I remember that, and to this day I still say, like, everyone seems to sleepwalk through the film.
Oh, I agree with you. It's like
even William Shatner's really, really muted, which sometimes could be a good thing. But in this film, it was just kind of, and what I remember was thinking, okay, there's that whole scene where like William Shatner's approaching the USS Enterprise for the first time in like years.
I know this.
And it's supposed to be like, oh, look at that, it's my old home and all that stuff. All I could think about watching it, because it went on for so long,
it's like
all I could
5
think about
minutes.
was like, is William Shatner wearing eyeliner? I couldn't figure it out. It was like somehow, it was like...
When you were a kid, you thought this?
Yeah.
Well, the problem
I
is
mean,
that
it's like, that's
scene
what stuck in my mind.
That's a perfect example of what the problem with the film is that scene is where you see the ship. It literally takes about 5 minutes. They speed it up in the director's cut. But it's just they want to show the special effects to tell a story, and they forget about the story. And the problem is, too, is like I said, they give Ilea and this Captain Decker so much to do, but they forget, what they fail to do is they neglect the rest of the cast, like Sulu, Scotty.
I guess the reason
Uhura.
why, and I'm clueless as to why they did this, but I guess one of the good reasons why they did that slow scene with the scope of the ship is you forget when you see it on your TV, you think how small it is. It's probably the size of like a B-52 bomber or something, when in reality, this is the huge, huge structure. So maybe that's why they prolonged it. I mean, I guess on the DVD with them tightening it up, maybe it made
it's
a
much
difference.
better. The director's cut is much better. Unfortunately, when they restored it and they did it for standard definition, so that's why it's not going to be out in high def. There is no high def master of it, which is sad. However, I will give credit the credit where the film it does deserve it. Let's see, Leonard Nimoy gives a great performance, probably his best performance in the series, I think. And the score by Jerry Goldsmith, wow, that's incredible. In fact, they've used it. They loved it so much they used it for the Next Generation on the theme. Definitely a great score, but the movie very problematic and very slow.
Before we move on to the next film, funny little bit of trivia. I read in William Shatner's biography that the costumes that they designed for the movie were so tight that they had to have the cast lean against wooden benches or boards to zip up the costumes. They were so tight.
He said they couldn't sit down either. They had problems sitting down, and he said he had to really run every day so he could stay thin enough to stay in the costume. But anyway, let's go on to the next one, and this is actually retooling the entire series from scratch. It was Star Trek II, The Vengeance of Khan, aka
Wrath.
No, that was the original title. It was changed to The Wrath of Khan.
I'm sorry.
It was actually, they went to a television producer. I cannot think of
It
what
wasn't
his name.
Gene Kuhn, I don't think.
No, it was not Gene Kuhn. I can't think of his name, but he produced the next 5 entries.
By
of
the way, I
series.
don't want any more racist emails because I said Gene Kuhn, all right?
It's Gene L. Kuhn, okay? I can't believe I remember that. But this guy actually, I forget his name, he actually was a television producer, and they asked him, can you make a sequel to Star Trek for a very low budget? So they actually went to the television division and produced a script, and they got Nicholas Meyer, who was a great
Nicholas
writer.
Meyer.
Great writer, actually, and they got him in, and he rewrote the script uncredited and actually made it Horatio Hornblower in space, as he said. And this one actually they decided to make a direct sequel to the original series, which was one of the most infamous episodes, which was Space Seed.
Space Seed.
Space Seed,
Yeah.
yes, with Ricardo Montalban, who was the infamous Khan.
In a muscle suit.
No, actually, they said that was his real muscles. That's what they said.
No,
That's-
not a muscle suit. That was
was him
definitely
real.
That was
him.
a Ricardo. I thought it was a
definitely.
muscle
The
suit.
guy is in shape. He is,
That was definitely
But they
him.
said they lacked a very strong villain in the first film, so they decided to get the best villain. They got Ricardo Montalban to come back as Khan.
That was very clever, though, if you think about it, although it worked for somebody like myself who never remembered him as the villain from Space Seed. Like I said, I like Star Trek, but I didn't make the connection that this was Khan from the Space Seed episode. And that was extremely clever because it was so well written that you didn't need to know anything really about the space
you
seed.
even need to, that's what they did. They basically made it said they had a history, and I mean, if you saw the other episode, it added maybe a little bit more.
And it was
not really.
Nicholas Meyer's touch to make the uniforms more nautical looking.
And
too.
they look a lot better actually than the original.
Yeah.
Because the original one, they look like they're in the day the Earth stood still, like from 30 years earlier. It's just they're too dated.
They look like they're outfits you wear at a day spa.
Yeah,
like they're like
exactly.
muscle shirts. It's like kind of funny.
Well, yeah, they were gray and white, I think.
But the
Very
movie
tight.
does have a little bit of reduced budget, but it's still, they make it work very well. And this time they have another score by James Horner, who's does a terrific job. Actually, a really good score, continuing off but changing Jerry Goldsmith's original. What I think works most in the film, of course, I love the rivalry between Khan and Kirk, even though they never share the scene together, only through the viewfinder. There's really a real tense moments where they're in the darkness and the nebula. I don't know. It's a very creepy movie too, actually, with the little
the
bugs in
scorpion-like
the ears.
thing.
That creeped me out when I was younger.
It's like the complete antithesis to the first film. It's pulpier.
Oh, by the way, what'd you say about a restrained Shatner? Because we don't get a restrained Shatner this one. We get full-blown Shatner this one.
Oh, yeah.
First one, we get
Did
restrained.
you say, I thought you said a strange Shatner.
No,
I was
no,
like, what?
a
What did you say?
restrained. Restrained.
Restrained. No, Khan. But I loved it. Great timing.
Dueling
Thank
Khans,
Excellent.
yeah.
No. The Shatner is in full-blown Shatner
But it is
mode
his
in this
best
one,
performance
folks.
as Kirk, actually, I think, in the series.
It was a little bit unsettling though because I got to see my hero because other than like Han Solo, Captain Kirk was like the stud to like pattern your life after because he was getting all the girls, he was like the leader of the ship, so on and so forth. But here he was getting old and he was trying to come to grips with it, especially when they gave him the glasses.
That's why I thought was
And he's just
interesting.
like,
They're
ugh.
actually letting the cast age instead of trying to, and that's the only movie where they actually really address their ages, because they're in their 50s now.
Yeah.
I mean, Shatner just turned 50, I believe, when he made this movie. And I like that. Unfortunately, other films, they try to ignore their aging,
Yeah.
and
then
really
it
works
makes
against the cast.
exactly it doesn't
Yeah.
work for the film.
And there's also one very big faux pas in this movie. Actually, it is Sulu. I'm sorry, not Sulu. Excuse me. Chekhov actually was not in the episode of Space Seed, but he's the one who Khan remembers when he sees him when they discovered the probe. Remember? And actually, Walter Koenig tells a very famous story. He goes, they gave it to the cast to read, see if there's any problems with it because continuity. He didn't say anything, and they got mad at him afterwards. He said, "I'm not giving that up. That's a great part," because they would have rewrote it for, of course, Sulu. But definitely, I think one of the strongest entries in the entire series. In fact, it might be the best entry in the entire original series.
Well, it's the one that sticks most in my mind out of all of them.
It is a great one.
I think it's also because Ricardo Montalban's a great actor, but that is, other than, unfortunately, Fantasy Island, that's the only other role he's really defined by.
Isn't that sad?
Yes, and I think maybe the reason he might have given such a strong performance. No offense to all the people who like William Shatner, I certainly don't hate him, but maybe one of the thoughts that was going through his mind playing the character was like, this mother effer has a whole series and a movie after him, and here I am, and he took out that anger, and used it for the character, and really just disliked William Shatner at all.
Mm-hmm.
Did they dislike each other?
I don't know, but I would imagine that's what, at least if I was Ricardo Montalban, that's what I would have thought. All those years I had to play in Fantasy Island, and people always say, the plane, whereas, William Shatner
That
gets
is
to be.
truly armchair psychology.
I know, well, hey, this is part of the show.
Next week,
saying.
armchair psychiatrist.
So, that is just my opinion. Maybe it's because I like Ricardo Montalban a whole lot more than I
Well,
ever
this is
liked.
interesting.
Montalban's going to watch this, and he's going to call you and say, thank you so much. Now
You
I
knew
get
my
it.
motivation.
Absolutely.
Now, what's
Nice.
interesting is Eric going to talk about how much he hates midgets because of this movie. Go on.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's get on that. Oh, before we have one
Midgets.
thing, this movie starts this is the part one of a 3-story arc, which will continue in the other stories of the Genesis device. Also, the ending which of course we're going to give you away anyway, is where Spock dies is a little overdramatic and kind of.
I thought that was very touching.
So did I actually, hate to admit, but as a child I
And
cried.
I was shocked by it.
I was shocked.
Well,
I was shocked by it.
I think it's not bad. It's just that I think it's a little overgrown. But I
Eric,
like it.
what'd you think of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan?
I thought I already indicated that. I think it's probably the strongest entry in that whole original cast
I think
series.
I might agree with you. It's the best acted.
Probably the best one, including the Next Generation films, because the Next Generation films aren't that great.
I will disagree with you on that, but we'll get to that later.
And it introduces two names into the Star Trek lore Kobayashi Maru, which becomes very famous,
Cool ass name.
and Botany Bay.
Oh God!
Botany
Don't
Bay.
do that. Every time I go to the Outback, my friend sees the Botany Bay and he goes, "Botany Bay, Botany Bay."
It sounds like, a female co-star in a 007 movie.
By the way, that's the name of
Or
one of the things on the
Kobayashi
Outback
Maru,
menu.
too.
But I like
But
the
anyway,
name Kobayashi.
this is the Genesis device, which we'll figure into this later. Anyway, we'll continue that. But anyway, Star Trek 3, the Search for Spock, and this one was actually directed by Leonard Nimoy. He came back on a condition he could direct the film, and he came back, and actually some people say this is the one that feels most like the television show, but I have some problems with it. I think Christopher Lloyd is very good as the Klingon commander. The problem is the production values on this movie are really bad with the Genesis planet. As everyone knows, the Genesis device is a thing that actually can make a barren world into a nice living world with, full of life.
It's like a
Earth.
missile with exposed circuitry, but it's not that big.
It makes a planet, a dead planet, a real life planet with trees and everything. And Spock's body is actually
Sent
on this
there and
planet.
reactivated.
It's sent there, and his body is reactivated.
Regenerates.
And somehow McCoy, who has his chi, I don't know what they call it, actually go to the planet to recover Spock's body to transfer his consciousness into Spock's body. The problem is the planet is actually deconstructing, and the crew of the Enterprise actually has to hijack their ship because they're going against the Federation to recover Spock's body, basically in a nutshell. As I said, I think the production values on this one really
Hence,
hurt.
Admiral Kirk becomes Captain Kirk.
Yes, he's demoted in the next end.
And we're introduced to Captain Kirk's illegitimate gay son.
Well, actually, he was already in
He
the
was in
second
Rathacon.
one. He was in
Oh, okay,
Rathacon.
yeah, that's right, that's right.
But
Well, actually, he died of AIDS.
I think this is probably the most forgettable one.
I
don't
would
remember-
disagree
You
with
don't
that.
want to give me the
well,
Genesis device?
I have to agree, but also disagree. It might be the most forgettable for most people.
I'm confused.
But at least for me, it is one of the most memorable.
I'm
Because,
confused.
Well, I'm trying to explain. And so,
Please,
What are you saying?
What I'm saying is the reason there's a few petty reasons I remember this film.
saw it
First
in
of
theater.
all was the movie poster. I don't know why, but I thought it was one of the most beautiful posters I had seen at a young age, mind you. I was probably about 8 years
Jeff, I concur because I saw it in the theater and I got the program at the theater
old. So see,
on 23rd Street.
and okay, this is
Edwin concurs.
that's good.
I concur.
Well,
Oh,
since
very
he
good.
since
we
he
bring
always
legitimacy
since
to
he always
his
throws
art
it to me,
chops.
I think Jeff will agree.
So anyway,
yes.
so
thank
so
you,
you
Edwin.
agree and you disagree.
Yes, and another reason this movie was memorable for me was because I don't know the name of the actress, but the woman who played the female Vulcan,
Robin Curtis, who took over for Christy Alley from
Right.
the other one.
Yes, I had the hugest crush on her. I even got the program guide just so I could look at pictures of her when this film
Isn't that
came
funny?
out.
We both had the program guide.
See, so
Hey.
that is probably why it was memorable. The only other reason it's memorable, which might be a spoiler, well, it is a spoiler, is also the fact that Captain Kirk's son got killed in the film, and that I don't know why, but that affected me considering. Unlike Mike, I'm not really the biggest fan of Captain Kirk in the first place, more of his speech patterns, if anything else. So that is why the film,
You're a fan of speech patterns?
well, I am a fan of his speech patterns. 'cause
But
I
what,
find
what
them
about the
rather
film?
Or
Do you
cadence.
agree with me that was sort of forgettable?
I can't really remember anything else other than the points I made up. Like he mentioned Christopher Lloyd. I don't even remember him being
He
in
was the lead bad guy. And also,
See?
There's one thing that was very memorable. The Enterprise is destroyed.
Yeah, but it also, I think, coming on the heels again of Ricardo Montalban, Christopher Lloyd just didn't make that impression.
I
so
agree
that
with him
I totally
100%.
forgot he was
He's
in the
good.
film.
He's
And-
good, but it's just-
but
it's
I mean, I
not
like
a
Christopher
movie.
Lloyd as
I
an
remember
actor.
the son dying. I remember Christy.
The replacement.
Robin
What-
Curtis.
What's her name? Being
Shemp.
replaced.
Shemp.
But for the life of me, and I remember all those shenanigans, the funny stuff about McCoy dealing with all the Spock stuff. I do not remember what the threat was.
that's
It was
why-
it involved the Klingon. That's all I
The
remember.
Klingon wanted the
Common-
Genesis device.
for
You
a
won't
weapon.
give me the Genesis device?
Well, apparently
God,
Mike
that's
remembers.
And I
pretty good.
remember
That's
how
pretty damn good.
And I
That's
remember
pretty
how
accurate.
disgusting the Klingon ship looked.
So
That was the only.
Okay,
The
doke.
problem with the movie too is some of the scripting is terrible. It's like, the planet is deconstructed. What do you mean? I use excess proto matter. It's just like it's such lazy scripting when you see some of the dialogue. It's very clunky. But anyway, let's get on to the next one. The next one actually is the most successful entry in terms of box office and actually people who are not even Trekkers like it. It's Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, which actually finds it continues the Genesis device arc with the crew of the Enterprise in exile on Klingon, following their voyage and actually going back to Earth. And actually, in some ways, it's actually a remake of the first one, but actually better. Again, an alien probe that comes to the Earth and is actually looking for a life form.
Which are
humpback whales. Actually, this film actually...
Great message.
Great message of conservation. And it's with Leonard Nimoy, of course.
You hippie.
Save the
Tree
whales.
hugger.
Well,
We be whales
Great
here.
message.
see, okay, I want to start off with this
Go ahead,
film
my man.
because this is one of the films where I felt like I liked the films, but even as a child, I thought, okay, this is getting a little ridiculous because they had this whole message, other than, the Star Trek, which was, conservation and saving the whales. And I found that a little funny. And I also found it funny that the way they hide, Spock's pointy ears is he just wears a really big white headband. And they ride on the city bus and he gives the Vulcan deathlock to, a stereotypical punk rocker listening to the
But they're
boombox.
the best city in the world for that, San Francisco.
Yeah, but I just started finding some of this stuff like more comical than.
Well, it was comical.
Yeah, but it's not supposed to be comical.
Yeah, it was supposed to be. It
We
was
should
one- it was
clarify
comical.
also.
I thought it was
Edwin
supposed
started
to be
off
a
introducing us
sci-fi.
by a film that this is the film trackers have like the most problems with and all that stuff. It was pretty well received. It was
I'm just
one of the
saying
better reviewed Star
I'm
Trek.
saying the ones that non-Trekkers like a lot.
And the thing is that it is a very tongue-in-cheek film. Of all the films, it's probably the
Exact-
most, it leans heavily
Well,
on
it takes-
satire.
it
Well, I guess
But
I was
it's
looking
also
for it
one
to
of
be
the most
serious.
clever
Well,
films,
no, it's not
too.
trying to be serious.
That's what I expected when I was
It's
going to
comical,
see
and
it,
the thing is,
though.
it takes the very
And
familiar
there's some
fish out of
very
water.
there's some very good tweaks to the whole
like it.
thing.
I think it's very
I would
funny.
say the only thing I have a problem with where the humor goes a little too far. It's like clearly these characters would not be so far removed from 20th century history not to know that's LSD. That famous scene where it's like he had too much
LDS.
And it's like, come on, that's like a stupid
Well, I
joke,
think it's kind of funny. I mean, there's some scenes in there that are very. Like I said, it takes a very familiar fish out of water scenario where the characters from another time go into, unfamiliar surroundings. There's very good performances by the most of the cast, and everyone seems to be having a good time, and their fun time on screen really translates well.
Kirk gets the girl again.
Kirk gets to go. In fact, that part was originally written for Eddie Murphy. I don't know if you know that. Eddie Murphy wanted
Eddie
to be in
Murphy
Star
was
Trek.
going to be the girl?
Eddie Murphy, they were going to make.
Yeah,
they
they
rewrote it to make it
wanted-
a woman, but Eddie Murphy was supposed to see some kind of spaceship, I guess, at a Super Bowl, and it was the Enterprise. Somehow he gets involved, and he's the marine biologist or something. But they rewrote it when he decided to do something else, like I think the Golden Child.
Would have been a little
Much better
different
choice.
movie.
Oh, well, that's the end of the show.
Comments? Because
Well,
We got-
there was two scenes in the. There's two scenes I really liked. One where McCoy yells
run
at
out
the
of time.
surgeon, "You butchers! Don't dig at his head" or something. And then the other scene was like,
Oh,
how,
we're out
do
of
you, how do
time.
you think he's not the one that invented this?
We will.
Transparent
We will talk a little
aluminum.
bit about this on next week.
Dude.
On Pot Dude. Until next week. Thank you.
Transparent aluminum.
I so have to-
How do you know he didn't invent it?
I love that one actually. There'll be whales here.